This is the best running shoe of all time, and that is the Nike Alphafly 3. And I'm going to explain exactly why I think that in this video. And with a bold statement like that, firstly, I want to get it out of the way. I bought this shoe with my own money. Nike haven't paid us or spoke to us about making this video. This is purely because I ran in this shoe and wanted to share it with everyone. Anyone who's maybe tried the previous Alphaflys, this is completely different for me. I wasn't the biggest fan of the first version or the second version. Yes, I still think they were very good at certain use cases, but in other areas I wouldn't have worn them for faster races especially. This I would choose to wear any distance, and started to get a bit of a meme about me where I say I'd wear this shoe from anything from 5k to the marathon. But this is the case with this shoe as well. So like the previous video where I mentioned the best shoe I've ever worn at the time, which was the Diadora Gara Carbon, which is here, I'm going to say the same about this shoe, where I would choose to wear this over anything else in all my road racing distances from 5k up to the marathon. I think it's that good. It's worth noting, especially maybe in the 5 and the 10k, some people might prefer a bit of a snappier, lower down shoe. I completely understand that. But for me, even when I'm running 2 40-minute kilometer paces, which I did test this shoe at, and faster, and also raced in this shoe faster than those paces, I still felt like this was the best shoe I've worn at those paces, whilst keeping me feeling comfortable, whilst keeping my stride long and efficient, and a lot of other things. I have also raced a half marathon in the shoe. It was my debut half marathon, so I've never done one before. I ran 62:24, and it was a pacemaking job, so I couldn't run any quicker, and I really wanted to run quicker because this shoe felt amazing, and I do think I could have run quite a lot quicker. And I'm not saying it was all down to the shoe, because I'd like to do my training some justice, but it certainly felt better at those paces than I've ever felt before. That could be a combination of fitness. Well, that will be a combination of fitness, training, tapering for this race, and also the shoe. But it definitely helped me feel as good as I did on that race day. The specs I will put in the description, because honestly, I don't know the specs. I don't like to look at the specifications of a shoe. I believe it dictates the opinion too much. So if I knew the drop of this shoe, if I knew the weight of the shoe, I might change how I feel. So I always really try to keep the specifications out of my head until I've worn this shoe a lot, and then just put them in the comments below. So first of all, the upper. And this is almost going back to Nike's traditional sock-like upper that we've seen in different shoes. And for me, it's just minimal. There's nothing really much to go right home about. Obviously, the tongue is fully connected to the upper, which is nice, because the last thing you want in a race, or any time really, is when you're tying your laces, that the tongue becomes like distorted or wonky. This tongue always keeps in exactly the way you want it to. So on that part of the upper, no complaints at all. Also, I'm not sure if you can tell, this isn't a colour change. This is just a skinnier bit of the upper. So it's very breathable, and I had no issues wearing socks and racing in the shoe for the half marathon distance. So it's certainly been fine in terms of making my feet feel good in the shoe and also comfortable in the shoe throughout the whole distance. I didn't actually get any blisters at all, which I was very shocked with, because I don't think I've never actually got some sort of blister or aggravation in the bottom of my feet, especially whilst wearing a shoe for that long of a distance at that pace. So that was the first thing to me. However, as good as the upper is, there was one issue. I wore low-rise socks. So after the race, I cooled down and I started getting a little bit of a pain, sort of where my foot would be, what was touching here. And I have actually got a bit of friction burn from my shoe just rubbing along this bit here, because it's not sharp, but when it's attached and you're constantly rubbing, it's going to do some damage over the half marathon or marathon distance. So if you're running that far, I would wear some socks that go past the ankle area, because I didn't, and I've got some marks to show for it. Other than that, the upper, Nike's laces, to get them right. Some other brands, not naming names, you could probably guess, even on their most expensive shoes, their laces are awful. Nike definitely do the laces right. Onto the midsole, which sets the shoe apart from anything I've worn. Like for me, when I've tested a lot of shoes, you almost can tell the similarities between them, and this just feels completely different to anything. Even the previous Alphaflys, like I mentioned, this is a completely new sensation in a running shoe for me. The best way to describe it is you feel like you're constantly running on a slight downhill. That's how you feel. That's how the stride length feels. I've tested it with my other favourite shoe, the Diadora Gara Carbon, with some footpod data, and my stride length is longer in this, and I ran faster in this. So both of those metrics are something I'm obviously extremely interested in for race day, because I want to have a little bit of a longer stride length, because it should mean for me more efficiency and also the pace was faster, and the perceived effort was lower. So actually, across the board, this shoe beat the shoe that I have previously worn and chose to wear in races over anything else I've tried. So this is now the top spot. Everyone knows Zoom X by now. If you've not tried a Nike running shoe before, Zoom X is still one of the most premium running foams on the market. In fact, I would actually say, again, bringing up the Diadora, the Zoom X foam in this is my second favourite foam of all time after Diadora's Super Foam, which is just perfect. But this is very close to perfect. You know, you've got a lot of cushion in the heel, and also the way the bubble works in this, I have not liked a bubble in a Nike shoe ever until this year. Until this shoe, and also the Nike Air Zoom Victory 2, which will be in another video. But I think because it's more stable and there's more foam around it, and obviously how the carbon plate is structured, the bubble actually feels like it contributes to pushing you forward rather than what it's been in the past, where it just feels clunky and also feels like it's just moving you side to side. So it's actually worked very well and complements the shoe and my stride pretty much perfectly. I think that's why I felt so good in the race, was because this made my stride feel effortless, which, even though a lot of super shoes make you feel like you're floating a bit, I've never had it where it feels so natural to just move forward in a shoe. So that's why I think I just really enjoyed this ride. And I think anyone who sort of likes a cushion shoe, a bouncy shoe, then this is definitely going to be the midsole. What provides you the biggest, provides the best sensation you've probably ever felt in a shoe. Like, I've tried super shoes across the board since the first ever super shoe came out. What, 6 years ago now, 7 years ago, maybe even longer. It's 2024. 7 years ago, I think, was the first super shoe. The outsole, it does look pretty minimal, and I understand people's concerns for that, but I'm not sure if you can tell, but that outsole, even though it is minimal, still has quite a big thick bit of rubber, and it is really good at creating friction on the floor. So when I first tested this shoe, I tested it on the track, and the track actually got icy. So other shoes I tested that day, I tested the Nike Alphafly Next% 3 and the Diadora Gara Carbon, and both of those shoes, grip-wise, was shocking. And then I came to this, and it was noticeably a much better grip. So it's hard to compare grips unless you've ran in all conditions and how each shoe performs on those conditions. I've ran on wet, I've ran on icy, and I've ran on dry conditions on the road and on the track. So I've basically done everything in the shoe, and the grip, completely no complaints. And that's what you want from a grip. You don't want to feel it, especially in a racing shoe. You don't want it to be too big because of added weight. And also it almost makes it a bit firmer when you've got more rubber on the bottom. That's not the case here, but the grip just works so well at providing what you need, the traction you need on all surfaces I've tried. And going back to the review where I tested this shoe alongside the Vaporfly Next% 3, the Vaporfly Next% 3 feels like I can't even express how bad it is compared to this shoe. Like, I've raced and ran 5k PBs on the road in the Vaporfly Next% 3 before. I'm never going back to it, because this absolutely smashes it out of the water in every conceivable metric. They're almost identical in weight, which is crazy because this is such a big shoe, but it's so light for how much is in it, and it's got so much more in the midsole that it outweighs it. It outperforms it massively. And to be honest, when I was making this video, I was like, can I be critical of anything in the shoe? And other than the fact that I stupidly didn't wear long enough socks, and obviously this rubbed against my ankle, I really couldn't tell you anything I would change about this shoe. Like, maybe if you could get the Diadora's foam and put it in this, that would maybe make it slightly better. But other than that, there's absolutely zero changes I would make. And I hope they don't ruin it for the Alphafly 4, because this is pretty much perfect. The only downside is the price. I bought this on a sale and it was £220. So I think normally this colourway, which is the Eliud Kipchoge colourway, is £280. And for a shoe that you're not getting that many miles out of because it's a race day shoe, that is crazy pricing. But overall now, you've seen brands like Saucony with the Endorphin Elite. You've seen other brands, well, Adidas with the Evo, it's like £500. So it's cheap by that standard. But overall, something needs to happen with these brands, because what we're doing, you're basically paying £280 to race in it a few times. It's crazy. But I still bought it, and I guess a lot of other people will as well. Let us know in the comments what you think of the shoe, if you've tried it, and maybe any issues you've had, especially any issues you've had actually, because I think it'd be good to know if anyone has some complaints so people can read those before spending a lot of money on a running shoe basically.